This is the first episode of The King and the Cage. We're going to be recapping UFC 266 from last night's pay-per-view. Very good card. Very entertaining card. A lot of memorable moments on this card. The main card obviously completely loaded as far as fight talent. The only, I think, weird fight there is probably obviously Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler. We know why they were on the card. We know what their purpose was for what was going on. And I think the card was really well put together from the prelims. Even some of the early prelim fights were really good. We're going to start obviously with the main event and kind of work our way down, but I want to talk about some of the possibilities from some of the fights that happened, how people looked, and what I see being probably next for them, right? So, Ortega and Volkanowski, featherweight title, 145. Volkanowski obviously has, I think last night, a lot of people dog this guy because of how close his two fights with Max were. He looked world class last night. Anyone that still gives this guy shit about being a champion or whatever, just the argument's over. Do I think Max won the second fight? I did. And I also believe that if you feel like Alex won that fight, I'm okay with that too. I understand the argument both ways. I personally just scored it for Max. But it was a very close fight. Both fights were. So I know there was cloudiness around that, but the fact that he did to Ortega what he did to Ortega last night, you can't take anything away from the guy. I mean, the striking display alone was great. The feints, the way he was setting up a lot of his shots. I thought his game plan was really good in the striking department. To me, the most surprising thing, I think, obviously, is Ortega is known as one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners on planet Earth. And he had 3 separate submissions locked in. I mean, as locked in as they get. Couldn't get Volkanovski to tap. To me, that was probably the most impressive part of this fight, which is crazy to think about the numbers that Volkanovski landed, the damage that he did to Ortega and everything like that. But escaping 3 submissions from a guy as good as Ortega, that doesn't happen. Getting away from Ortega once is a lot. 2, 3 times, and I mean just weathering the storm, just taking it and letting his arms burn up until he could make a move and survive. That was the most impressive part about this fight to me. Alex did what I thought he would do. I think Alex is a great fighter. I thought the question mark would be Ortega's jiu-jitsu. I didn't think Ortega, yes, his striking improved, but it's not on the Volkanovski level. It's just not. And I think Volkanovski's pressure and pace and all that combined, it's very different than how, Ortega looked great against Korean Zombie, but Volkanovski's style is just so much different in the way that he approaches. And I think, it put a lot of pressure on Ortega, and I think he was backing up a lot and just kind of playing Alex's game. And once they went through the first 2 rounds, I didn't see it getting any better. I thought one of those submissions was slick enough to get it done, but Volkanovski, obviously, the balls of a fucking mammoth, just getting it done, retaining his title. Some damage on his face, but, Ortega's a tough dude, so we kind of figured it would, he wouldn't get out of there completely unscathed. Volkanovski at the presser, he was talking about Conor McGregor because Conor was tweeting about him. He was talking about Cejudo because Cejudo was talking about him. I will say this. it is a great day to be Alexander Volkanowski, because no matter what road this goes, he is in for a massive payday. You have now defended the title twice, once against who a lot of people believe is, one of, if not the greatest featherweight of all time in Max Holloway, after beating him for the title. Then this title defense, whatever his next fight is, the options, if Cejudo is on the table and Conor's on the table, he said he'd go up to 55 to fight Conor, which I think would be hilarious. And then, you have the winner of Yair and Max, which I believe will be Max. I just think Max has too much. If you're Volkanovski, if those are your three fights, you're getting paid, right? You're talking about three of the bigger stars in the sport. Cejudo, Olympic gold medalist, 125 and 35 dual champion. Max Holloway, greatest featherweight of all time in some people's opinion, not mine. I still reserve that Jose Aldo is the greatest featherweight of all time. But I do understand why you would say Max, and Max is great. So is Volkanovski and Conor, and there's no argument there. I just think Aldo's resume is what gives him that. Volkanovski holds a win over Aldo as well. So for me, man, I would love to see him and Cejudo. I think Cejudo makes the most sense right now, and I'll say why. Conor obviously is just being Conor. I don't think that fight would ever happen. I don't think that's the road. I don't think it really does much for Conor and what Conor's trying to do. If Conor's trying to get back to Dustin, then you've got to fight a normal 55er, in my opinion, to do that. I think fighting a 45er at 55 doesn't get you closer to Dustin. It does in today's UFC, I guess, maybe, right? Because all you have to do is have a win, and they'll do whatever they have to do to make title fights happen. But I don't see that being the case. I think Cejudo is the move, right? You figure Yair and Holloway are going to go. They're going to need some time to, recover, all that stuff. I think I would love to see Volkanovski and Cejudo. I think Cejudo brings a style that would work very well against Alex's style, and also vice versa. I think Alex's style still kind of works for him too. They're both obviously, Volkanovski's a great wrestler. Cejudo's a fucking Olympic gold medalist. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't get better than that. Both have great striking. Cejudo's beaten the who's who of the divisions that he's fought. He holds a win over Mighty Mouse Demetrius Johnson, who a lot of people find, or some people believe, pound for pound, the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. He beat TJ Dillashaw. He beat Dominic Cruz. Arguably the two greatest bantamweights of all time. So to see Cejudo now get an opportunity at a third belt, I think would make sense. He took time off. He was able to heal. He's probably, if this is something that he's really been thinking about, knowing how wrestlers work, he's probably been working this whole time, trying to, healthily put a little bit of weight on, make sure the cardio stays, and, make sure he's peaking and seeing the gains that he wants to see. But if he really wants to go to 45 for this fight, I think Volkanovski's the best matchup for him. He doesn't give up as much in size as he would to, Max or T-City or, whoever. I think the reach being closer with Volkanovski, I think, just makes the fight easier for Cejudo. I think Cejudo has the skills to make it happen. So I would love to see that. I would love to see Volkanovski and Cejudo really tie it up here. Max, you got time on Max, and there's really nobody else knocking on the door for Alexander the Great right now. So I would love to see that be the direction that they go. If he wants to get paid and Conor actually wants to fight him, he should absolutely go and do so. Go make your money. It is what it is. For Ortega, I was talking, me and Zach were talking before. There's a few different fights I could see for him. But Giga is probably next, I would think. I don't know. You got Ige still out there. Cater's still out there. But Cater, just got battered. So I don't know how long he's gonna want to take off and fix the things that he needs to fix. But Giga and Ortega, to me, is probably the fight. But Ortega's gonna need some time off, man. Like he got battered around again. But unfortunately for him, his 2 title fights were 2 historic losses. I mean, he has taken an absolute beating in these 2 title fights between Alex and Max. So, I hope he gets whatever he needs figured out, gets back healthy, gets back to it. I would love to see him and Giga. I think it makes sense for both guys. Ortega, it shows that you're still separated from the other guys in the division. And for Giga, obviously moving up, getting closer to the belt. That's what everybody wants, right? You want to get closer to the belt. So, I thought excellent stuff from Alex. Ortega, still going to need some time on the striking. Alex landed a lot of good counter shots. And, we'll see what happens next with both these guys. Before that fight was the co-main event, where we had lucky Lauren Murphy, not so lucky last night, and Valentina Shevchenko. I mean, there's nothing left to be said about Valentina at this point. If she's not the greatest mixed martial artist, it's Amanda Nunes, and then she's second. There's no argument for me. When I talk about, Amanda, I think what holds Amanda's bigger, right? And she has a bigger resume. She's fought bigger names. She's beaten those bigger names. And Amanda has exceptional skills. When I look at Valentina technically, I see someone who has absolutely mastered mixed martial arts. I mean, everything that she does is so crisp. There's no wasted movement. It is all so efficient. It's scary. It's scary. I haven't seen anyone personally, like this to me is the type of shit that they make movies about. People this good. People as good as Valentina Shevchenko. They make movies about people like this. Like she's overwhelming without being overwhelming. It doesn't matter where the fight is. She's better than you. And that's got to be absolutely infuriating for the opponent. You go to the ground, she's out-wrestled the best wrestlers. She's submitted the best submission people. She's knocked out the best strikers. The toughest people, she still put them away. Like, I don't know who else is there at 25. I think the only other fight is if Rose were to come up, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think Rose has plenty of fights for her at 115 that make way more sense than chasing Valentina right now. Maybe if Rose goes on maybe 3-4 title defenses, then you start thinking like, okay, maybe I'll go see what's up with Valentina. Valentina and she's got some more miles on her at that point. maybe you jump up and see what's what. But at 125, I don't know what's left. She's beaten everybody they've put in front of her. The only person with wins over her is Nunes, and Nunes is occupying 2 divisions at the same time, defending both belts and making it look easy. So I don't know where you go with Valentina at this point besides a super fight. I mean, her and Nunes at 35, I would obviously watch that. I'm all for that. I just don't know if anyone wants to go that route, right? It's got to make sense for Amanda. It's got to make sense for Valentina. It's got to make sense for Dana, right? Because you're risking damaging the person that you're promoting as the greatest woman fighter of all time. And the sport was so much smaller when they fought the first time that you know, if Valentina were to beat Amanda, it could kind of damage the legacy. From a technical standpoint, I don't know anyone that beats them besides each other. And that's scary for a division or 3 divisions being held up by these two women that just don't look like they can be beaten. Valentina literally looks like she can't be stopped. She doesn't get hit. I mean, look at significant strikes, 12% for Lauren Murphy. She landed 11 of 91. And Lauren Murphy looked great in her last fight. But if you're hitting 1 out of every, you know, total strikes, 19%, 1 out of every 5 shots you throw, hit the person. She's not getting hit. She's landing 58% of her sig strikes, 65% of her total strikes. She's landing takedowns. I don't know what you do with her. I don't know what you do with her. I don't think there's anyone that can beat her. I don't see anyone at 25 that can beat her. 35, I think she mops most of the division with the exception of Amanda. You know, I think there's a couple other fights that she could lose at 35, more due to like size and depending on how the fight itself went down. But I just don't, there's nothing left. Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say damaging the legacy, but you definitely, I think from what they saw with Ronda, where they had promoted her, where people were literally taking bets on if people would last a minute with Ronda Rousey in the cage, the division has become so much bigger and women's mixed martial arts has become so much bigger that I feel like the terms would just have to be perfect for it to come forward. Like as a fight promoter, is it better to have a woman hold up 35 and 45 or a woman that can hold up 25 and 35? Is it better to not let Amanda hold the 2 belts? But really, no one's proven that they can deserve to fight Amanda at this point. You know, she's got a tough fight coming up with Pena. Some people think it'll be a cakewalk. Some people think it'll be pretty tough. But if Nunes wins that fight, I don't know. I don't know what you do with either of them at that point. But if Pena wins that fight, you could definitely do Valentina and Pena. I believe Pena actually lost to Valentina at 25. So I wouldn't mind seeing that fight get set up, but I don't know what happens with any of these women fights besides 115, where you know, it looks like Rose and Weili are gonna run it back, and I'm looking forward to that. That should be good. The first fight, I had high expectations for. It ended with a quick knockout. Hopefully, we get to see a little bit more, and really see who the best is. I love Rose. I love Weili. I think they're both very skilled, but that's gotta happen. And then you know, maybe some other stuff fall in place after that. Before the co-main, we had a 5-round OG war, I guess we'll call it. I guess there's no title. So to me, the whole 5-round thing is so weird to me. So like Nate and Leon, it makes sense to me, right? Leon is top 3 in the world. Nate Diaz is still, I guess, kind of a ranked fighter somewhere in the rankings. I don't really know. He's Nate Diaz, so I mean, he gets the fights, right? But whoever wins that fight, it was like, okay, this person's probably gonna fight Usman, right? So it kind of made sense for it to be 5 rounds. Like, I'm okay with number 1 contender fights being 5 rounds. This being 5 rounds to me made no sense. Nick, I'm not sure even really wanted to be there. It didn't really look like he wanted to be there. He's still a gangster and he fought and landed, and I mean, he brought it to him, but like, I don't know. I got an overwhelming feeling from Nick Diaz that like once it became real, like he didn't really want to be there. And I respect that if that is the case. And I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, sorry, Nick. You know, it is what it is. it's been a while since I saw him fight. Last fight I saw him was obviously Anderson, but it was such a weird fight because you didn't know what to expect, and Nick starts with this wild spinning heel kick, and I thought Robbie was just going to come out like a dog off the leash kind of thing, and kind of did, and they went back and forth, and then Nick started landing a little bit, and the antics go back and forth, and it was entertaining, but it was just like Robbie lands the big shot that ends the fight, and Nick just kind of like quit, I guess. Like, I don't know if his nose broke or what it was, but Robbie told him to get back up. Nick didn't get back up. The ref looks at him and he's like, "You want to fight?" And he just kind of shook his head no, and the fight was over. So I don't know, if he was actually hurt. I haven't seen anything. I mean, he may have been injured, which is fine. He may have just said, "Fuck it. I'm going to take this bag of money and walk out." And if that's what he did, I respect the balls, because that's some gangster shit if you're Nick Diaz, if I'm being honest with you. I personally said, and I'm sure I'll get some hate for it, but I think Nick Diaz ends up boxing Jake Paul. I don't think Jake Paul is going to fight a normal boxer yet. I think Nick Diaz showed off how good his boxing is last night. He's closer to Jake's size, which is a lot of people are saying, like, oh, Jake's only fighting these guys that are smaller. They're not real boxers. Nick Diaz's boxing is better than Tyron Woodley's. It's way better than Ben Askren's. Nick would be, without a doubt, the best boxer that Jake has fought, if that's the fight that happens, and will also be the closest to someone in Jake's size that Jake fought. Sign me up, dude. I want to see how long Jake Paul can keep doing this. He's got me. In the beginning, I was like, man, fuck this. Like, this is, I don't want to see it, right? And he knocks out Nate Robinson, which was hilarious. And Ben Askren, me knowing like the MMA world, I knew Ben Askren couldn't box worth dick. So that made sense to me. And when he beats Askren, I'm like, okay, he knocked him out. He knocked out a guy who's been hit by Robbie Lawler. He knocked out a guy who's been hit by, fucking Jorge Masvidal. And, he put him out. Respect there. Obviously, he's got power in his hands, right? And I've been saying this about Jake Paul, and I know people, shit on him just because he's Jake Paul. He has legitimate boxing skill. He has real boxing skill. So then when he jumped to Woodley, I knew it was a step up, and he looked pretty good. I think a lot of, it was a little bit more controversial, and, it wasn't so one-sided. But if he is going to box again, Nick Diaz is probably the biggest name that presents a real enough threat for people to buy it, a real enough threat for it to be, a bigger threat than Woodley for Jake. And I think that's potentially what's next for Nick Diaz. Why not? If you're Nick Diaz and you go 3 rounds with Robbie Lawler in a cage, it's way different than taking a boxing fight where you just have to box and use your cardio, which we know Nick Diaz is always in shape. So, if Nick's in shape, his boxing looked good to me. Him and Jake Paul makes perfect sense, especially with Jake Paul wanting to fight Nate. This is an easy, if Jake beats Nick, then roll out Nate and, we see what's what. But I think that's probably the direction we see go with that. As far as Robbie Lawler's concerned, I don't know. He's ranked 15 here. Who knows how much more he wants to fight? If he's going to keep going, that's a tough division, bro. That's a real tough division. I honestly could see maybe, I know there's a lot of hype around Hamzat. He's got a fight coming up. Maybe Robbie's a ranked guy that they give him if he wins this next fight. I don't know. I don't know what could be next for Robbie. I don't know if he takes like a legacy fight. He's been fighting a long, long time. So we'll see what happens there. Never been a fan of the Paul brothers. However, they can fight the style they can do. They are also money. They draw. They know how to manipulate the crowd. I don't use the phrase, but they truly are sports entertainment. They are. They've created something that's working. And people are legitimately buying it, legitimately promoting it. Real fights. And, you know, you're getting you're getting more and more.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
You're getting more and more added into what the possibilities are, which is pretty awesome.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Thank you for the follows, guys.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Hang on 1 second.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
All right. All right. So the fight before the big 5-rounder with Nick, you know, that fight was a bit sloppy for probably some people's likings, but is what it is. So this fight was very interesting in my opinion, for the landscape of what's left at heavyweight, right? So right now we have Francis Ngannou, who is the undisputed world champion. We have Stipe, who is 1-1, was said undisputed heavyweight champion. We have a interim champion in Ciryl Gane, who got an interim title fight just a couple months after Ngannou won his title. You have John Jones lingering somewhere in the background / prison. And then there are Derek Lewis, who just lost the interim title fight, Curtis Blades, and Rosenstruik. Rosenstruik, obviously known for his kickboxing, power in his hands, knocking people clean the fuck out. Curtis Blades, big time wrestler, but honestly, kind of deceiving in the striking in some ways. This fight was, you know, a lot more technical than I think people thought it was going to be. I think Curtis landed a few real good shots in the first round, and Rosenstruik knew, like, this guy's not just a wrestler. He's got power in his hands too, and I can't get caught or get reckless. And I think that started to sway the fight towards Blades. And then once Blades was able to start, you know, getting takedowns and all that stuff, you know, it's a bad night when Curtis Blades takes you down once, let alone 3 of 6 attempts. I thought it was a masterful performance from Blades. I mean, this is what we have learned to expect from Curtis Blades as a perennial top 5 guy. I thought his footwork last night looked way better than it had in the past. He was a lot looser. He looked leaner to me. I like what Curtis Blades is doing, and he's got longevity. And I think that's something that, like, he's understanding and knows that he has time. He's only 26. These guys ahead of him, you know, Stipe, probably not many fights left. John Jones, definitely, if any, more fights left now. You know, Gane is new to the UFC, but he's not a young pup. And same with Ngannou, right? Curtis Blades, 26, I think they said last night, 26, 27, some crazy shit like that. The man's got time, and he's already, you know, been a top guy. He hasn't fought for the belt yet, but who knows what happens for him with all the crazy nonsense going on right now at that weight class. Obviously, we're going to get Francis and Ciryl. I personally think we should have been getting Francis and Stipe, the trilogy. There's zero reason why Stipe shouldn't have gotten a rematch, in my opinion. But, you know, business is what business does, I guess. John, who knows? You know what I'm saying? I'd like to see Curtis Blades and Stipe. That makes sense to me, right? Whoever wins that fight gets the title fight of whoever wins Gane and Francis. I would not bank on John Jones being around. And I know that that's kind of like the money fight right now for heavyweights, so to speak. But I just don't I don't see it happening. He was arrested for fucking like domestic violence and fucking with somebody's vehicle or some shit. And, you know, it's the path of history with John. This is what happens. Nature's healing, I guess. But yeah, he's, you know, who knows what happens with John. I wouldn't bank on him being around. So I would say Blades and Stipe make the most sense if Stipe's not going to get his fight. If Stipe's a free agent, walk, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what you do with Stipe, because if Gon, unless you wait out, you know, Gon and Francis and you fight the winner, but man, I don't know. I don't know. Stipe's been in some wars. I just don't know how long you go. If you're Stipe, how long you're willing to wait before getting that title fight. So to me, Blades and him make sense if they want to do that. Other than that, Blades versus anybody, Volkov, whoever. He should just stay active and take fights that are competitive, but are going to help him kind of solidify himself as a title contender in the meantime. So what kicked off the pay-per-view was Cynthia Calvillo and Jessica Andraj. I've always been a big Cynthia Calvillo fan. I was a fan of her when she went to Alpha Male. I thought her wrestling, she had a lot of the skills there that she would succeed. I don't think she's with that camp anymore. I think she's in Vegas now. She's looked better since leaving Alpha Male. But Jessica Andrade, Jesus fucking Christ. I mean, she looked... This is what drives me insane about Valentina, right? So Andrade beats the brakes off Cynthia Calvillo. It was very competitive in the beginning, and I think there was a lot of overreactions to everything that Andrade threw. Cynthia was landing a lot in the first minute and a half of the fight, 2 minutes of the fight. But you can tell when Andrade lands on these girls that they don't fucking like it. And it doesn't take many of them before she puts your ass away. And that's what happened. And what's insane to me is Andrade looked like she didn't even belong in the cage with Valentina. And she's the second best in that division. And that's why I don't know what you do with Valentina at this point. She's already got a win over Andrade. Andrade looks world-class against everyone else. And Valentina just makes everyone else look average. And when you have a champion that dominant, they will eventually lose. But I don't think Valentina loses for a long, long time. Like, if she wants to hold this belt for a decade, she could probably do it. Her technique is so beautiful that she could probably do it. But if Andrade is second best, I mean, Andrade has all the skills to be a champion if Valentina weren't there. So I don't know what you do with Andrade. Do you set her and Valentina up again? I don't know. I guess it depends on what Valentina wants to do, right? Like if she wants to chase a super fight or what. But if that's the case, what do you do with Andrade if Valentina's going to wait? Do you have her fight? I don't know. I don't know what you do. You have her fight Lauren Murphy? Do you have her fight? I mean, that doesn't really make much sense. She was already ranked higher than Lauren Murphy and is coming off a win. So, what does she have to gain? The 125 women's division, I have a lot of questions right now because I don't see anyone emerging that is believable to beat Valentina because Andrade didn't look close. But she looked great last night against Calvillo. I mean, she landed how she wanted to land. She set things up. She looked dominant the whole fight, was never really hurt. Put her away in the first round. I mean, I don't know how much better things can get than putting someone away in the first round. So kudos to her. She got it done. I was happy. I'm a Andrade fan. I've always been a Calvillo fan, so it was cool to watch two of my favorites get after it. But Andrade was, the better fighter last night. So that's gonna take us to the prelims. These prelims were fucking crazy. Marlon Moraes and Merab was bananas. Marlon landed on Merab in the first round of that fight and looked like Merab was on Dream Street like 30 seconds straight. I mean, he couldn't stand. He was just doing enough to survive. And the crazy motherfucker fought his way back into the fight, landed a takedown, got his wits back about him. Marlon blew his load trying to put Merab away once he hurt Merab, but wasn't able to put him away. So then once Merab starts wrestling, I think Marlon had just completely drained the tank. And when they came out in that second round, I think Merab knew Marlon had already drained the tank and knew he just had to swarm him. And that's pretty much what happened. He ends up putting him away at the end of the second round. And then they had gone back and forth. I couldn't believe how back and forth this fucking fight was. And for a minus 260 underdog to put away a guy like Marlon, I mean, Marlon's world class. He's striking is phenomenal. I don't know what happens next in this division either. I think bantamweight is probably, arguably the hottest and deepest division in mixed martial arts right now. Champion's hurt, pulling out of his fight. They're saying they're going to do a fight probably for an interim title, which makes sense to me, with Piotr Jan and question marks. My guess is TJ Dillashaw. I think that clearly makes the most sense. I think it's all going to depend on if TJ can get a camp in and how he's feeling and stuff like that. But I don't know who else you put in that slot if it's not TJ, with Corey just losing to TJ. I don't know what else you do with that, unless you're going to leave it for not a title, and then I guess you could just feed him whoever takes the fight, which it sounds like the Sugar Show wants some of that, which I would love to watch that. I would absolutely love to watch that. Dan Hooker and Nasrat, bro, this shit. These guys went through fucking hell to get on this card. Dan Hooker made weight in like 24 hours or some crazy fucking shit like that. All this visa nonsense from New Zealand, yada, yada, yada. He gets the fight. Up until like a few days before the fight, they weren't sure if they had an opponent for Hooker. Nasrat steps in. There was a death in his family. So he's making weight on short notice, dealing with a death in the family. I mean, the balls on both these fucking guys, exquisite. The fight was great. It was a lot of fun. I thought Hooker looked phenomenal. Real wrestling game now. He displayed a lot of wrestling last night, which I think was a big question mark on Dan. You could tell he's been working on it a lot. But I love this guy striking. I love the way he sets things up. I love his reads, his feints, everything that he does in there from a striking perspective. Dan Hooker is absolutely one of my favorite people to watch fight. He's so skilled, and he sets all these sneaky traps in his striking. And he's young too, and if he's able to put a real wrestling game behind his striking, he's going to be a real problem at 55. I know the top of 55 right now is an absolute fucking Shark Tank, and Hooker's had some tough losses against some great opponents, but if he puts together a real wrestling game behind his phenomenal striking, he could be a world champion, I think. I really do, but there's so much talent at lightweight. You know, him and Dariush sounds great to me. He brought Benel up after the fight. I've been a Benel Dariush fan for years. And this last run he's been on has been great. I think that fight makes a ton of sense. I think it's another, Hooker's a bigger name in the division. So I think that helps Benel out a little bit. I think he's unfortunately been the product of not having a big social media following or fan base. And he's kind of missed out on some fights because he's not the sexy pick. So I think a fight with a guy like Hooker makes a lot of sense for him. And for Hooker, it kind of solidifies hey, this guy's this, filthy wrestler and ground guy. who's developed a striking game. I want to show that I can still deal with wrestlers as I move my way up 55. So, Shamil and Dawkins, bro. Dawkins, I fucking love this guy. This is the last fight we're gonna talk about, and then we're gonna just kind of talk about, some potential stuff coming up. But Dawkins to me is just a fucking gamer, man. Like he's light on his feet. He throws fucking heavy, and the man's he's a problem. He's got a bad fucking attitude, and everything he throws, there's malicious intent with everything he does. And I like it. And age is on his side. He's quietly and quickly just torn through the heavyweight rankings. I mean, they said Shamil last night was ranked number 6 or 7 at heavyweight. I mean, this guy's looking at a top 5 fight next. And that's amazing for him. Dawkins he hasn't been in the UFC all that long. And he's just knocking people clean the fuck out. And I mean, he put this guy out twice. He put him out in the first round. His head smashed off the canvas. He was out cold. And then when they came back in the second fight, he hit him with a bomb again. And the fight was over. The fight was over when Shamil was coming out of his corner and still looked like he had no idea where the fuck he was. And I was like, Dawkins is going to land a bomb on this dude. And lo and behold, the nuke came, and that was the end of that. Dawkins is going to be a real problem at heavyweight. I do want to see more. I want to see him challenged. And I think the next fight has to be a challenging fight. A guy like Rosenstruik coming off a loss, probably not a terrible idea. Volkov's up there. Derek Lewis is up there, but I don't know about Derek Lewis, man. Derek Lewis is, I don't know if you want to jump in that part of the deep end yet. Derek Lewis got dynamite in his hands. Yeah. We'll see, man. I don't want Dawkins to move too fast. I think this is a guy who has potential to have a pretty solid run at the top of this division. And I don't want him to move too fast, too soon, get hit bad, and it alter his shit. Either his confidence or, I just don't want him to put himself in a position where he's not going to be the most productive version of himself. I think he's got a good team. He's got, that Philly heart kind of ego going with him. I like that, dude. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and he doesn't really give a fuck. So I like that, and I think there's a lot of good future fights coming for him. That's it for 266. We're not gonna cover any of the other fights that were on the card. Shout out to Roxy. Love Roxy. She's an OG. She unfortunately lost this fight, but shout out to an OG of the fucking fight game. Love me some Roxy. So coming up, we've got there's a fight night coming that's got Johnny Walker and Thiago Santos, which should be someone's going to sleep. That's all the fuck I know. Someone's getting knocked out next Saturday night. So if you're an ESPN Plus member or you watch things from other places, check it out, man. Check it out. If you're not super into the fights, kind of like boxing or violence, the main fight on that fight card next week will more than likely produce a pretty vicious knockout based on these two guys' resume. Go ahead and YouTube some highlights if you've never seen their stuff, but they're both violent gentlemen. Yeah, guys, so we have a bunch of good fights coming up. We've got a pay-per-view coming up in Madison Square Garden, in which I may hopefully be attending, with Usman and a couple other really big fighters. We're gonna be covering everything. We'll do the fight nights. I may not do every single fight night, but I'll do some of the more intriguing fight nights. We'll talk some rumors. We'll talk some shit. we'll do some top 5 lists and stuff like that. Or we'll cover something current going on in the fight world. But that concludes the first episode of The King in the Cage. I appreciate everyone who has checked this out, whether it was live on Twitch or on YouTube afterwards. If there's any suggestions or anything that you guys want me to talk about or want to see added into the show weekly, like viewer questions or something like that, leave it down in the comments below on YouTube and let me know. And I'd be more than happy to start doing that stuff with you guys if you guys wanted to send them into my email or Discord or Twitter or whatever. So make sure you check out all the links on my thumbnail and make sure you like and subscribe to the page if you like the MMA content. Appreciate everyone for coming out for the first one. Appreciate everybody in the live chat that came through. Much appreciated, guys. Thank you, and I'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.